Since Naughty Dog chose to remake The Last of Us for PS5, I figured that I should also redo my review of it. To be fair, I was never satisfied with some of my original opinion videos, since I was just starting out at the time, so this will be a fresh new covering of the game rather than a direct comparison to its original release. Whether you were introduced to the game on the PS3 like I was, or you're getting into it for the first time now, I can say that it beautifully stands the test of time, and delivers a powerful and emotional story that will stick with me forever. With the remake on the PS5, it really does shine, and makes the most of its hardware. Luckily, the gameplay is left intact, and it was an absolute thrill to relive this incredible story again, even after 10 years. The remake does, however, carry over some features from Part 2, such as the innovative accessibility system, where you can enable colorblind mode, path tracking, and you can even have the controller vibrate when the characters speak for the hearing impaired. It was such a great system, so I was glad it was brought back. For those of you watching who still have never played, the game opens in Austin, Texas, where a young father named Joel Miller, played by Troy Baker, rushes home to rescue his daughter Sarah after a strange zombie-like infection causes their neighbors to turn hostile. With the help of his brother Tommy, Joel escapes the city with Sarah but are confronted by a soldier who is ordered to open fire. Sarah ends up taking a bullet and dies in Joel's arms, which was really heartbreaking the first time I played through it. The game did an outstanding job introducing the characters and the storyline while putting us in the fear-stricken perspective of Sarah for the first few minutes. Something that I really liked was, rather than just being another zombie survival game, it really takes the genre and puts a nuanced twist on it. Rather than the generic unnamed virus, it's mostly an airborne fungal infection based on a real-life specimen. The cordyceps fungus is known to infect insects in nature, while eventually spreading spores to eliminate an entire colony, so that was the main inspiration for the game, and the developers implemented this in fun and creative ways. There are a few variations of infected, ranging from the basic runners, who are weak but fast and relentless. The stalkers are a bit similar, but are smarter and stealthier, so they are harder to detect and will sneak around corners for ambush positions. There are the horrifying clickers, which are deadly foes that cannot see very well, but they will kill you instantly if they get their hands on you. Finally, there are the bloaters, which are the toughest of all that can throw projectile spores and will utterly destroy you if you get caught in their path. While there isn't a big enemy variety, the game makes the most of it so each combat encounter never gets repetitive or boring. Anyways, 20 years pass, and Joel is now living in a quarantine zone in Boston with his partner Tess. After a deal goes wrong involving a trade with some stolen weapons, a woman named Marlene, who is the leader of a militia faction called the Fireflies, meets with them and agrees to give them what they're owed if they can smuggle someone out of the city. Marlene explains that the Fireflies are expecting a teenage girl named Ellie, played by Ashley Johnson, as she has a natural immunity to the infection. The Fireflies believe that this can be researched and reverse engineered to create a cure. Again, this is a trope that has been done to death, and I was dreading it at first, but it's handled in such a nuanced way that it feels fresh and exciting. They didn't have to reinvent the wheel, but they still told a good story that borrows just enough to be different. When Joel attempts to deliver Ellie to the Massachusetts State House, things quickly go wrong and Tess is killed. Joel aims to keep his promise, and travels across the country to the Fireflies Hospital in Salt Lake City over the course of about a year. Along the way, the two of them face countless dangers, and meet some interesting characters, all the while forming a bond not unlike that of father and daughter. What makes this game so engaging is its characters. They aren't good people, but are morally ambiguous in a world of violence. You have Joel, a gruff and stern survivor whose hardships have defined him, as he actively pushes away any sort of emotional connection. Ellie is a smart-mouthed teen who grew up in this new world while having to learn how to defend herself, but even she has her fears as she desperately wants to be with someone and not struggle alone. They play off each other beautifully, and they really carry the game from start to finish. In addition to these great characters, I have to talk about the world itself. The visuals are easily some of the best I've ever seen, even on the PS3. The sunlight is impressive, the lush green vegetation encapsulates everything in sight, and the ruins of once proud cities are elaborately detailed, giving this world an eerie and desolate feel. As far as post-apocalyptic worlds go, this one is by far one of the prettiest. There are several collectibles that you can get in the game to encourage further exploration. You can find Firefly pendants and miscellaneous items for world building, and there are training manuals that can improve the attributes of some of your weapons and abilities. There are also some optional conversations that you can engage in to simply add some fun character building, which is great since development is not just exclusive to the game's cutscenes. The gameplay also works amazingly well. Playing as Joel is nothing like playing as Nathan Drake. The camera is permanently fixed over the shoulder, and there is a greater emphasis on stealth. You can use this sort of listening mode where Joel moves slower while the outlines of enemies become visible through the walls. It's not very realistic, but it's very useful. Joel can use a small collection of pistols and long guns, as well as a few craftable items. By collecting some raw components in the area, you can create health kits, molotovs, smoke bombs, and explosives. Some of these use the same ingredients, so that adds a new layer of strategy into the mix, like would you rather craft a molotov over a medkit and so forth. The same can be said for shivs. You can use them to instantly kill clickers if they try to grab you, or you can pry open doors to rooms that house useful items. You can also find scrap pieces laying around that are required to upgrade your weapons at workbenches, and supplements to enhance your physical abilities. I, for one, don't see a downside to consuming various out-of-date medications. Even on easier difficulties, it can still take a few playthroughs to max everything out. Finally, there are melee weapons and throwable items to collect. You can use bricks and bottles to distract enemies, but you can only hold one at a time. What's cool is that there is a distinct gameplay difference between the two, as bricks can be used as one-off melee weapons, while bottles can stun enemies if thrown at them. That's actually really clever. There are even some parts of the game that allow you to play as Ellie. By that I mean one chapter. She has a different playstyle, with an even greater emphasis on stealth and critical thinking. The DLC Left Behind was an absolute thrill, as it explores Ellie's backstory with her friend and crush Riley. This edition features some really fun character building moments, and takes place as a flashback during a major event in the main story. There was even a cool moment that I wish appeared more than once, where you encounter both infected and human enemies in the same place. You can lure them towards each other, and watch them fight it out before picking off the remaining survivors. It was really entertaining and felt very rewarding as a player. Some of the other additional content includes a multiplayer mode called Factions, where you pick between joining the Hunters or the Fireflies as a small story unfolds. Essentially, you have to keep your group alive for 12 consecutive weeks. Each match counts as one day, meaning that you will have to play through 84 matches to win. That's just for one faction, and this can get extremely frustrating and competitive after a while, especially when the looming challenges are present. If you don't accomplish the small challenges each week, your clan members will die off, and this will become mandatory later on because if you don't accomplish everything by the deadline, you will be fatally screwed. Part of me was glad that this was dropped from the remake, but at least we'll be getting a standalone multiplayer game someday soon, so it can shine better on its own merits. Overall, The Last of Us had a lot to offer with what it presented, and I adored it for what it accomplished. It left a lasting impression on me and so many others, and I will gladly return to it several more times for years to come. Its legacy is widely celebrated by players, and I'm sure many more will honor it in the future. There is even a full-length TV adaptation on HBO Max that follows the events of the first game, while adding in some cool new character elements and features in the Cordyceps lore. For example, the growth that appears on the walls and ground is all connected in some way, meaning that disturbing a tendril in one area will alert a horde a mile away and so forth. A great deal of research was done, and the inclusions they added are welcome and interesting. I'm not expecting these to carry over in the next game, but I'm glad that the show can follow its own sort of continuity. There are several differences in the story, with some being larger than others, and we even get some long segments devoted to character backstory. Bill, in particular, receives an entire episode where we see the relationship he shared with Frank, and how these two opposites found and lost love. If you know the game, you'd remember Bill as the hardened survivor who keeps everyone at arm's length, while Frank was already dead during the game's events, so it was great to see a new and vulnerable side to him. With all of that said, I still adore the game that started it all, and I look forward to seeing what this beautiful and dangerous world has in store next. Please give it a chance if you have not already.